Valheim is a survival game where I am a Viking, and in order to progress in game I have to defeat bosses in every biome. So I gave myself a challenge to survive for the 30 days and to see how far I can progress. So first let's start with day 1. So I start my journey in a biome called Forest. It's a very beginner friendly biome, and basically all of my enemies are animals and greylings. I gathered some sticks on the ground, which I used to craft myself a first stone axe, and with that I was able to chop some trees. After gathering few basic materials, I started killing some animals around me, and to be fair, they're not really that hard to deal with. Shortly after I found the old abandoned house, which I decided to use as my temporary shelter, well, at least for the first few nights. I cooked myself some meat, and that basically gives me some extra max HP. And with that I was ready to fight some boars, because boars are basically kind of a threat at this point, not gonna lie. And of course killing boars lets me craft some new items, and also I get a new food source. Shortly after it got dark, so I went to bed. Day 2 started, and first thing I decided to do was to craft a bow. Of course I used leather that I got from boars to craft it. So why do I actually need bow? Well, first of all, I like ranged playstyle. And second, I can use my bow to hunt deers. And also I can take down bee nests from the safe distance. But I will talk about bee nests a bit later on why they are important. And now I decide to start my next building project, and that's making my first house. And that will take some time to build. And while I'm building my house, I decide to talk about something real quick. I used world modifiers to slightly increase material drop rate, and also a second thing that's more important, I removed restrictions from teleporting certain items, because usually you can't teleport ores, and I don't like that about this game. And in my opinion that doesn't make my game any easier, it just makes a game a bit less grindy, that's all. It got dark, so I went to bed. I started day 3 by crafting a flint axe. It's a bit better than the stone one, and because I'm cutting trees all the time it was very helpful. Of course I continued with building my house. If you're someone who watches my channel, then you probably know that I'm not that good at building in video games. For some weird reason I was struggling a lot with building my roof. I wasn't really sure how to make it. But hey, in the end I was happy with the result that I got. Maybe it's a bit too big house for a beginning, but it's fine. I started day 4 by destroying my old base, because that's a way I can get some extra wood without struggling too much. I moved all the necessities back to the new base, and I made a small roof for my fire, because if it starts raining then my fire goes out. And in Valheim you can't really sleep without having a fire next to your bed, so that's why. Other than that I did some base organizing, like a small storage and stuff. I don't wanna bother you with that stuff too much. But I do wanna point out that I made a small honey farm. That's why destroying those bee nests was so important. But okay, enough of building, now it's time for some progression. I had to start killing some boars and deers again, because I need a lot of their leather for stuff. After spending the entire day killing animals and collecting flint, I had enough materials to upgrade my crafting table, and that way I can upgrade my bow and I made a new flint knife and wooden shield. Now I have decent weapons and I'm ready to take on the first boss called Iktir. I probably pronounced that the wrong way. So how to summon that boss? Well, first you gotta find the summoning area, which is pretty much marked out already for the first one. And when you reach the sacrificing altar, you have to place down 3 deer heads, which of course I have. And after that you pretty much fight. It's funny to call Iktir boss because he's just an oversized deer basically. His attack pattern is very predictable and it's very easy to dodge. And even if he hits you, it barely deals any damage. And to make things easier I just used the bow, just to keep a distance between me and Iktir. After he is defeated, he drops 2 things, his head, which I need for power-ups, and also he drops his antlers, which I need to craft a pickaxe. Day 6 was very productive now. I was pretty much done with the meadows biome, so I entered a new biome called Black Forest. And this is when the game gets a bit harder, okay? There's no more easy creatures to deal with. I was kinda lucky to have a black forest next to my base, and as soon as I entered it I found a dungeon, which is perfect. But before I entered it I had a small problem to deal with, a troll. Yeah, you can already tell why this is much harder biome. But dealing with troll is okay when you have a bow. Again, you keep distance and it's fine. After I killed him, I entered the dungeon. And oh boy, I wasn't ready for this, let me tell you that. Because using my flint knife, it barely did any damage to skeletons. And I died twice, as you can see. But the reason why I'm in this dungeon is because I need surtling cores. After some time I collected a decent amount of surtling cores, so I headed out of the dungeon to explore a forest a bit. And I found carrot seeds, which is great, and also a small copper vein. It got dark, so I went back to my base, and I used my surtling cores to craft a charcoal kiln, which I need to produce charcoal of course, and a forger where I can smelt ores with coal. And that's it for day 6. Day 6 was a pretty chill day. First I made a troll armor using a ladder which I got from killing a troll of course. I upgraded my club a bit because it deals blunt damage, and after reading Wikipedia it turns out that skeletons are weak against blunt damage. And basically what I spent doing the entire day was mining copper ores. I went to copper deposit, I mined it out, head back home, then smelt some coal and ores, and repeated the process until it got dark, of course. Day 8 started, and you know what I did? The same thing, of course. This is why I slightly bumped up resource rates in my world modifiers. But at this point I gathered enough copper to craft myself a forge. Forge is basically a crafting table where I use ores to craft new weapons and some materials like nails. And in forge I crafted a copper knife. Yeah, that's it, nothing else for this day. On day 9 I cut a new tree called a pine tree, and that way I can unlock some new building materials. But spoiler alert, I didn't really use it in the next following days. And I had a small problem, like I wasn't sure why I can't craft any items in my forge. And then I remembered that I need bronze ingots, not copper ingots. Basically you get bronze by combining tin ores and copper ores. So I went to mine some tin ores on the shore. But thank god they aren't that hard to mine. So I didn't spend a lot of time doing that. And that's when I realized that maybe I need more surtling cores for my smelting project. I don't know why I keep saying projects, like it's not a project. And of course the way I get more surtling cores is by heading back to dungeons. But this time I had an upgraded club. Also, other thing I should mention is that I found a spawning location for the next boss I have to fight. As I was making my way back to base, something annoying happened. I got raided by monsters. You see, there is a mechanic in Valheim where sometimes you get raided. Because I'm in Black Forest Terra now I got raided by some grave dwarfs. And of course I failed to defend and I died, shortly after the raid stopped. On day 10 I spent a lot of time smelting ores, and now I had a decent amount of bronze. First I made a cultivator. I needed to plant some trees and plants in the future. Do you remember how I found carrot seeds earlier in the Black Forest? And I couldn't just place it anywhere, I had to make a small farm first. As you can see, it looks very basic, but I like it. I still had some bronze ingots with me, so I made a bronze axe. But why bronze axe? Because there is a white tree called birch, and you can't mine it with flint axe, that's why I needed it. It gives fine wood, which is basically super useful. I need it for the future for making some portals and furniture, and of course new weapons. And that's it for the day 10, it was pretty chill. Day 11 was very uneventful day. First I used copper to upgrade my forge. Then I did some organizing around my base, like storage and stuff. But because now I have fine wood, I was able to make my first set of portals. So of course I linked my base with copper mining area. And that's it for this day, nothing else happened. On day 12 first I planted birch trees next to my base, since they are a bit harder to find. And then it was time to put those portals to good use. So I started mining copper again. I basically removed all the unnecessary walking back to base. And of course, as soon as I started mining, it attracted a troll. This time fighting a troll was a bit harder, but still fine. Oh, and I also made a full troll armor, beside the cape of course. I don't really need it right now, since cape only gives one defense point, and that's nothing in this game. On day 13, carrots finally grew up, but instead of using them I decided to replant them, because I didn't really have a lot of them. Then of course I did some more mining, and I got attacked by troll once again. And needless to say, that troll was magically transformed into slight upgrade for my troll armor, if you know what I mean. Now I finally had a shit ton of bronze ready, so what did I do with it? I upgraded my copper knife, I crafted a bronze buckler, and I also fully upgraded that. And that was very expensive. And also I made a couple of bronze nails, which I used to build my first ship, so that means that I can finally leave my starting island. But more on that on the next day. Day 14 started, and first I had to take a portal with me, because what's the point of sailing across to other island if I can't teleport back to base, right? As I was getting ready to enter the ship, I got raided once again, but this time it was very different. With my upgraded gear it was so satisfying to kill all those grey dwarfs and stuff. Now I finally set sail to the next island, I entered a new biome called Ocean, and after a couple of minutes I was on the next island. Of course, first I linked portal back to my base, and then I explored a bit until I found the Elder summoning location. So of course that's the reason why I went to this island. It was getting dark, so I decided to go back to the base. But on my way back I found another troll. And you know what, I wanted to sneak up behind the troll, because knives have a very big bonus if you attack a monster from a sneaking position, if that makes sense. And to my surprise this was a very satisfying kill. Of course I upgraded my troll armor a bit and I went to bed. Day 15 was a pretty chill day. I spent the entire day preparing for the Elder fight. First I needed a new bow called a Finewood bow. I fully upgraded it, and to compare it to my last bow it dealt 41 damage. Which is a pretty big upgrade because the last one did 25 damage. Also I needed new arrow types called fire arrows. I made 200 of them just to be safe. I didn't wanna run out of arrows in middle of the fight. That's basically a death sentence when you fight an elder. So let's talk about how you summon an elder. You basically need 3 ancient seeds, and I was still missing one of them. And the best way to get ancient seeds is to raid Grey Dwarf nests, because basically they have a 100% chance to drop one ancient seed. As soon as day 16 started I fought Elder. So Elder boss is basically a very large tree. Unlike Iktir, he's kind of a threat actually, and best way to fight him is from the long range. The tactic is very simple. I have to keep moving around, because if I stay still he summons plants, and they deal a lot of damage. As long as I can hide behind obstacles like trees and rocks, it was decent fight. Every now and then I got hit by him, but it's fine. The most annoying part were grave dwarfs that kept bugging me around. And after a couple of minutes he was finally defeated. The Elder drops 2 things, his head and swamp key. I will talk about this a bit later. After the fight ended I decided to go back to my base, where I decorated my house for a little bit, because that way I can increase my comfort level. And basically higher the comfort level is, the longer your resting period lasts. And while you're rested you basically recharge stamina much faster. This game is unplayable without the rested buff, believe me when I say that. After that I went back to the spawn location, where I placed down the Elder head, and that way I unlocked a new power, which basically makes tree cutting 50% faster. It's a great power for building, but I don't really need it right now. I will still stick to Iktir buff. I still had a few minutes of sunlight, so I went to get some tin ores. And that's it for day 16. On day 17 I made a cauldron. You only need like 10 tin ingots for cauldron, so it's pretty easy to make it. And I regretted not doing that much faster, because you need it to make better food. And the better quality food you have, the more stamina and health you get from using it. I made queen's jam and boar jerky, which is very easy to make. Other than that, I spent the entire day exploring the second island. And that's when I realized that this actually isn't the second island. It's still connected to the first piece of land where I spawned. So I didn't really need a ship to travel to here. And that's it for day 17. On day 18 I made a new set of portal, because I wanted to explore a new island now. Also my carrots grew up, so I could make some better food on cauldron, and I ended up making deer stew, which is basically the best food source I can have right now, at least for max HP. So I have a new set of portal and I have my ship, so it's time to venture out to seas again. I was looking for an island with a swamp in it, and I wasn't very lucky with sailing. It took me an entire day to find this one piece of land where I saw a swamp from the distance, shortly after I went to bed. So day 19 started and I started exploring that island. Sadly, in order to cross to the swamp, I had to cross plains biome, and that area is really dangerous for me right now. I almost died 3 times being there, 2 times from mosquitoes and once from a little goblin called Fueling, but it was worth it in the end. I entered the swamp. And I got really lucky and I found turnip seeds straight away. This is probably the first time that I found them without really even looking for them. But yeah, swamp is a new biome that I will spend lots of days in. It's filled with skeletons, droggers and slimes. But the main reason why I'm here is sunken crypts. They are filled with treasure and iron ores, which is a new ore that I can use. But in order to enter sunken crypts I need to use a swamp key, which I got from Elder Boss of course. I filled up my inventory pretty quickly with iron, so I left it without exploring it too much. Other than that, I picked up all carrots and I planted new turnip seeds. Oh, and I smelted iron, which unlocked tons of new recipes, but sadly I didn't have enough to craft any new weapons. Nothing special happened on day 20. I was out of circling cores which I needed for more portals, so I spent the entire day running around in Black Forest, gathering cores in dungeons and fighting trolls. New day started and first thing I did was I linked a third portal on top of the crypt, because that way I can transport ores much faster. So sunken crypt is basically the same as the dungeon, but you fight droggers and slimes. They are much stronger than skeletons, but it's manageable. There are 2 ways you can get iron in crypts. First is by mining scrap piles, I think that's the name. And second way, much better one, is when you find rooms with chests and then there is a chance to get like 20 iron or something inside of it. In the end I got 56 iron from this small raiding session. I still didn't completely clear out the whole crypt. So I went back home, I smelted some iron and I made myself an iron pickaxe. And I decided to test it out on a copper deposit, so I can see how much better it actually is than the antler one. And I gotta say, this pickaxe is much better than the previous one I had. Probably 2 or 3 times more efficient. If you hate chores, then you will hate day 22. I was out of wood, so I spent whole day cutting trees, then turning that trees into coal. I smelted a lot of iron, which I ended up using for iron shield and mace. And then I upgraded all my iron tools by 1 tier, and I made 2 big barrels called fermenters. You need those fermenters to start brewing potions. So the first potions that I started brewing are the poison resistance ones, because swamp is filled with enemies that can poison me, and they are very dangerous. But that's not all, also turnips finally grew up. I mean, sure, I didn't have a lot of them, but I had enough to make a spice rack. Spice rack basically lets me craft new food sources in cauldron, which means that I can finally start making sausages. They are very good food source and they are very easy to make. Today was hell of a day. I spent the entirety of day 23 in crypts. I thought like, okay, maybe I'm very close to clearing out the entire crypt, but oh boy, I was so wrong. I tested out new iron mace and shield and they are pretty good. But this place is very dangerous and I almost died at one point, fighting a Draugr elite. I found so much scrap piles and chests filled with iron. And I also found a new location for bone mass. That's a third boss that I have to fight. After legit clearing out the crypt for around 20 minutes, I accumulated over 150 iron, which might seem a lot, but it isn't, trust me. On day 24 poison resistance was done brewing. And now I wanted to brew some other potions, but I was missing ingredients. So I went back to swamp to fully explore it, because I wanted to kill some leeches for blood bags. Because if I remember correctly, I need those for frost resistance potions and medium healing ones. Other than that, I spent rest of the day smelting iron and I started a new organizing project, of which I will talk more about on the next day. Okay, so it's time to talk about my new storage project. I mean organizing project. Basically I have so much problems with my chests, and now when I have iron I can make new chests which are basically double the size than the previous ones. But they are a bit pain in the ass to craft. I need 2 iron ingots and 10 fine wood. But it wasn't too bad to do it because I still didn't smelt all the iron I had from before. Takes a lot of time to do that, trust me. Oh, and I also started brewing medium healing and stamina potions, because I was getting ready for the boss fight soon. On day 26 I crafted iron nails, which I need for my new ship. So then I destroyed my old one, and as I was running across the swamp I got attacked by a big abomination. That's basically a troll on steroids. I got very lucky and I managed to survive. I got out of the swamp as soon as possible and I crafted a new long ship. This one is much larger and faster, which is more important. And now I was ready for my big voyage to a bone mass boss location. Sadly weather and wind weren't on my side, so I spent whole day and night in storm in the ocean, and I still didn't get to the end of my destination. I still continued sailing for the large portion of day 27, but I did find a couple of few interesting things this time. I found this small floating island filled with some minerals, and as I was mining those minerals the island started moving and shaking. So it turned out that this is actually a living creature called a leviathan. Another cool thing I found while I was sailing was this merchant icon on the minimap, but I didn't go visit it because I still wanted to fight a bone mass first. And as I was getting closer to an island with a bone mass location, I found another icon on the minimap which looks like a cauldron, so I'm guessing that's a witch hut from the new update. I don't know much about it because I didn't play this game for a few years. So I finally landed in the swamp during the night time, and I was afraid to die because if I did that then I would lose all the progress, and since I didn't have my portal placed down, this would be a terrible mistake. Luckily there was a dungeon next to a bone mass spawn location, so I placed a portal on top of it where I can be safe. And before I went to bed I fully upgraded my iron shield and mace. And that basically spent all my iron reserves. Day 28 was the day when I fought the bone mass. But before that turnips finally grew up, which means that I can make even better food now. That's perfect timing for this fight. Honestly, I don't really feel like explaining this fight, so I will just cut out the best parts of this fight. Okay, I blocked. I can fight him here. Whoa. Okay, I gotta use my health potion. Okay, blocked. Blocked. Stamina potion. Whoa. I just have to be careful a bit. Whoa, I'm gonna die. Nope. I think arrows are useless. Yeah. Oof. We are chunking him nicely. Blocked. Oof. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's half of my health. Nice. I just have to chill, that's all. Blocked. Oof. Stamina potion. Oh. Okay, I think I kill him now. No, I'm out of stamina. Oof. Okay, he died. After the fight was done, I went to visit a witch. I was so curious what she has to offer me, and as it turns out, it was just some kind of food ingredients and a serving tray. I will see what's that about in the next day. So back to bone mass loot. He drops a wish bone. That's basically an amulet that pulsates when you are near a treasure. That's a bit useless for this biome, but my next destination are mountains, and there it's very useful, trust me. I went back to my base and frost resistance potions were done, which means that I can really go to mountains now. I have everything I need. On day 29 I actually didn't want to explore mountains, because there are only 2 days left in this video and I wanna leave this for the next part when I'll be making it. But I went back to my spawn location, I placed down a bone mass trophy, and I actually use that power up now, it's very good. Basically I get resistance against physical damage. Other than that, I spent whole day fighting abominations in swamp biome. And I bought some ingredients from the witch, and to use them I have to make a food preparation table. So the food I can make with that are called servings. And to be fair, they aren't that great, but there's a one good thing about them, they last very long, for 50 minutes. But I won't bother to make them in this part. Okay, day 30, last day. I wasn't really sure what to do now. So I spent whole day cutting trees around me which I planted earlier. I filled up a small chest with wood and I thought maybe I should start building something. And there was this small lake next to my base and I was like, okay, I should maybe make a bridge here. It got dark pretty soon, so I decided to go to bed, which means that I officially survived 30 days. And before I end this, I just wanna say thank you all for watching my videos, and right now I have 73 subscribers and that's great, so if you wanna see more content like this, just please subscribe and like the video. Thank you and I will see you in the next one.